James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honor as always to speak on behalf of the people of Timmins James Bay, and I've lost count of the amount of times that I've risen in this House to defend the principle of the supply management system that we have for farming, because in debate after debate, we hear positive messages, but we see it undermined continually in the trade agreements. And supply management only works if the fundamental pillars are in place and intact. The reason I think it is such an important system to preserve is that we're not talking about subsidies. Our farmers don't need subsidies. They control a market that supplies milk to Canadians, and it's a system that works. In my region of Timmins James Bay, particularly in the Temiskaming farming region and neighbor Abitibi-Temiskaming region, the dairy farmers are backbone of our rural economy. We have seen in the other sectors, we've lost pork producers to the boom-bust cycle of the pork market. We have had our cattle farmers are always having to struggle. There's good years, but there's years where they are really impacted by what is being given out in terms of payment for cattle being brought in at the large slaughterhouses. The ability of the dairy farmers to maintain their market and control it has been stability through good times and in bad times. We have, of course, many cash crops in our region, and when I first was elected, we had many smaller farms. In northern Temiskaming region, there still is the family farm, smaller units. But in terms of cash cropping, it's getting harder and harder to maintain that and to compete with the larger corporate farms that are coming in, and to maintain the finances of cash crop farms is more difficult. But then again, let's look at dairy farms. In our region, young families are able to farm. We have many young dairy farmers who are building barns, who are investing, and these are major investments in the region. New dairy farms up in Matheson in the Timmins region, in Earlton, Englehart region, where dairy continues through good times and in bad to maintain the balance of the economy in rural Northern Ontario. So this is a system that works. It is a system that doesn't hit on the taxpayer for subsidies, and it's an efficient system. We look at our neighbors in Wisconsin, the dairy farmers there who really don't like the supply management system, yet we see massive problems of dumping because of overproduction. We don't have overproduction in Canada's dairy market, so this is an efficient use of farming. It is really important that we maintain the defense of the dairy sector, because we always hear, and I just heard it from my Conservative colleagues, these false promises of globalization, that if we strip away any ability of a country to maintain regional and local economic vitality, that we're somehow betraying this larger principle of globalization. Well, I would say to my Conservative colleagues, look around. Globalization has failed us. And every other country involved in globalization right now are making sure that their backyard and their regions are being protected. We're not asking for anything that's unfair in terms of protection. We're asking to maintain a system that works, a system that allows young family farms to maintain and to grow and to invest. So it's a big principle for New Democrats. We've always been supporters of the supply management system. I will point out, Mr. Speaker, what we've seen in the loss over the years of the corporatization of agriculture is many local value-added operations were threatened. Some of that's starting to change. Certainly in the Timmins region, which is, of course, much more known for gold and copper mining than agriculture, we're seeing some really fascinating smaller specialty farms that are bringing food to market, urban areas. The potential for young farmers to do that is really exciting, and it's something that 15 years ago we didn't think was possible. We thought we'd just have to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and yet we see niche farming is making inroads. And I would certainly encourage the government to support, through investments, these niche markets, and we can even see them in urban areas. People want to know where their food is coming from, and again, as the global supply chains are becoming more challenged, the ability to have community gardens, community food. Certainly, I think Toronto having backyard chickens is a great idea. Making our cities livable places that have animals and the ability to grow and not just monocrop grass and concrete. But going back to the role of dairy in our region, we had, for many, many years, we had Thornlow Cheese Plant, a very small local producer, but it was owned by Parmalat, one of the biggest milk company in the world. Parmalat had no interest in our region. They had no interest in the future of Thornlow. So one day they just called me and said that they were going to shut down Thornlow Cheese. And what they wanted, what was valuable to Parmalat, weren't the jobs in the region. It wasn't the product. It was the quota. They wanted to be able to take the quota away from our region and consolidate it in a much larger Parmalat plant elsewhere. And we met with the dairy farmers in our region, and we said, are you willing to give up the quota and give up our potential to maintain production here? And the dairy farmers, who certainly in Temiskaming have shown a willingness to stand up many times to defend their interests, said, no, we're not going to go along with this. And we went back to Parmalat and said, here's the deal. You can leave, but the quota stays. Parmalat laughed at us, but we were intent. And the quota stayed. And I encourage anyone who drives up Highway 11, stop in at Thornlow Cheese. You'll see the best selection of cheese anywhere, because what they did with the quota was they diversified. And you can go into restaurants in Toronto and get Thornlow cheese. In order to build quota in terms of more access to quota in cheese, you have to do specialty cheeses. So Thornlow has specialized in all manner of cheeses. We have a great brand now of grass-fed butter that's very, very popular with people who like to cook, people in urban areas. It's essential that we maintain value-added production in Canada to supply markets that are emerging. So again, we're not relying on the large container ships bringing cheap product from elsewhere, but we're actually empowering communities, empowering farming, empowering rural regions to be part of a sustained and long-term vision for a 21st century economy. That's why supply management is so crucial, because it is one of the foundation pillars of a sustainable rural economy. It does not have the boom and busts that we've seen in other sectors, and it does give the opportunity for young farming families. So again, Mr. Speaker, I don't know how many times I've spoken on supply management, but I'll continue to speak for supply management. I will continue to speak for the farmers in our region, because they are fundamental to the fabric of our region and to our country. And so I will be saying that the New Democrats will support this bill, and we will support and continue to fight for supply management and to argue its importance with the ideologues who believe that globalization and free trade should be allowed to erase our local farms and replace them with whatever is coming in from wherever else. We can compete, we can hold our own, and we are not asking for any handouts. We're asking to maintain the rural and regional and national right to make sure that our farming is sustainable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.